Hi, I can only imagine what you're going through if you are experiencing any health issue or if you're a parent to a special needs child. Please take what I'm about to share with you as my little gift to support you. This meal has done so much for me, and you can find out why I'm passionate about what I am about to share if you listen to my personal health journey on this channel. I have had testimonies from friends with diabetes, excess body weight, ulcer, high blood pressure, depression, skin condition, asthma, aging parents, joints, joint pain, and fertility issues. This has made me realize that most of the health issues we experience can all be linked to nutrient deficiency, lack of sleep, and lack of movement. The aim of this one pot meal is to cut down worrying about what to eat or feed your family every morning or as a first meal. A meal that removes nutrient blockers like gluten in bread and cereal and estrogen filled lactose cow's milk to replace them with nutrients that really we shouldn't be feeding our boys. If you have a son or sons, milk from cow, because they contain a lot of estrogen and some of them are even lactose intolerant. Where this meal is to replace these kind of food, these nutrient blockers, with nutrients to fuel the body and brain to minimize sugar spikes and crashes throughout the day. It will cut down cooking time and worry about what to eat or feed your children in the morning. This contains sufficient nutrients to fuel the body and brain and minimize sugar spikes and crashes to promote mental clarity, energy, and focus throughout the day. I would like to suggest you start weaning yourself off cooking with stock cubes like Maggi, Knorr, and others that contain MSG, which makes it hard to sense satiety. You're not able to know when you're full because the food is so palatable, or when you're full from now on. So when you remove them, they would help you sense satiety more. Once you start reducing or totally stop the use of it, your taste buds would change. You will crave less food that hasn't done you any good for years. I have found batch cooking this meal so helpful, and here's how I prepare it. First is to get an electric slow cooker if it's affordable to you. If it's not, please go ahead and use your normal pot until you can get one. The only reason I recommend this is because it retains more nutrients than the normal pot does. I soak 3 different beans, 3 different kinds of legumes. For me, it's kidney beans, black beans, and chickpeas, including 2 days before I cook this. So I soak them 2 days before I use it. I also use lentil. I soak the lentil the day before. The reason I do this is because legumes contain lectin that cause digestive problem and a leaky gut, which can cause our body to fight itself and allow toxins to get into our blood, which goes on to affect our brain, leading to a host of chronic diseases. This is why people who have ulcer cannot tolerate beans. But if you cook it the way I have suggested, or I'm going to suggest, you will feel better. The night before I cook the meal, I cook about 1 kg worth of cow foot with enough water over half of the pot So when I put the cow's foot, I put the water and I make sure the water is coming up to over half the pot. This is to get collagen for about 5 hours. So I slow cook for 5 hours for the skin and bone marrow to come off the bone. Collagen helps us digest food better, grow our hair, nail, and make our skin glow. This helps a lot of people with health conditions that affect the brain, digestive problems like ulcer, the skin, as well as women going through perimenopause and menopause symptoms. It helps with our hormones, for fertility issues, and blood sugar for people with diabetes. The next thing to do is to get as many vegetables as you can. It is time for us, to start trying out vegetables we've never tried before. The reason I say this is because is to populate our gut with good bacteria, making it look like a beautiful garden. We have trillions of bacteria to feed to keep us well. They strengthen our immunity and help us fight disease to keep us, their hosts, alive. We need to look after them so they look after us. Open up your mind and get vegetables like celeriac, celery, mushrooms, turnip, butternut squash, cabbage, carrots, green peas, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, our local Nigerian ugu, greens, or any vegetable that you fancy and is accessible to you and you want to try it out. Get all you need ready for the cooking day. I also defrost my protein the night before, wash, cut, and clean, and store in the fridge for the next day. I use mincemeat, beef mincemeat, or any mince that you like, or I use blended liver. This is because my kids don't like the taste, so I blend it. Liver is a superfood. No one food contains as much nutrients as liver. You can look it up. I at times mix it with kidney and heart. About 200 grams I blend, or 300 sometimes. I sometimes may use skinned chicken, so I take the skin off because most of them are fed corn, which store omega-6 inflammatory oil. They are very similar to the vegetable oil I have suggested, like corn oil, canola oil, raspberry oil. All these oil are not good for you. They are inflammatory because they are omega-6 oil. I have suggested you replace them with coconut oil or palm oil, which are saturated fat. Now I cycle these proteins I've mentioned. So if I use mince this week, I might use the liver another week. Another time I could use chicken. I cycle them just to get a bit of the nutrients in some of this protein. On the day I cook this, I get the biggest pot because I don't want the size of the pot to limit what I add. And I find it also allows the food cook quicker because there's sufficient room. I rinse off the fermented legumes thoroughly. I usually ferment the lentil and black eye beans separately from the chickpeas and kidney beans because it softens quicker than the last two. So in goes the chickpeas and kidney beans in the pot with enough water to cover it. I boil for about 15 minutes, then add the black eye beans and boil it. You will notice some foam coming up as it bubbles, and the water will be dark. Rinse that water off until it's clear. Return the beans to the stove, add some water to it, not a lot. Now add half of your bone broth. Remember, I am working with the measurement of legumes I mentioned. I usually take 1.5 cup of each of these legumes, just to give you an idea. If you have a bigger family, You might want to just try this measurement out and see how much you need to increase it. If you have a smaller family, you might want, I'm cooking for a family of 4, you might want to reduce it. If you're cooking more, you might need all the bone broths, but normally I only add half of the bone broth I cook, and I keep the rest to cook other things. Or I use it for the week after. So cook once you've added the bone broth, cook for another 15 to 20 minutes until the legumes all soften. Not mushy, don't make them mushy, except maybe you have digestive problem, and then you can cook it for much longer. But just make sure it's not hard anymore. If you have digestive problems, some people blend this food instead of eating it whole. I also boil water and soak my tomatoes and peppers. I take out the skin of the tomatoes and the seed as well as the seed of the big peppers and the small pepper. These things I've mentioned cause digestive problem for a lot of people, and we don't even know it. It causes the gut to become leaky. If you wonder why ants and ants and pests don't eat tomato, is because there's a lot of toxin on the leaves and even the tomato itself. They never eat it, they don't go near it. So when we digest it, sometimes this is why our gut becomes leaky. In goes your hard vegetables like unripe plantain. I cut that up and add that in. Yam, white sweet potatoes, butternut squash, any vegetable that you want. Add your protein now. I usually use, most of the time I use mackerel fish. You can add any fish you want. So I usually have mackerel fish every week. Any other thing I add is just the add-on, but I always have mackerel fish. Mackerel fish is my preferred protein. Even if I add some liver to it, it would not be as much as if I didn't add the mackerel at all. So mackerel is my preferred protein, and every other thing would just be added a little bit. The mince will be less, so I could blend the mince or mix the mince with the liver if I use mince. And the liver I only use once every 3 weeks. I would add it on, or you can add a bit of all these things I've mentioned, as long as you're not overdoing it. And remember, you have a lot of vegetables to balance the acidity of this protein. So in goes the unripe plantain, yam, sweet potato, butternut squash, or any other vegetable you want. I also add blended tomatoes, peppers, onion, and garlic, which feed those bacteria from the vegetables. And I cook this for another 10 minutes. I add prawn and as much herbs as you like. I usually blend cumin, turmeric, coriander, cloves together, and I just take in a bowl and I just scoop when I need it. I add a generous scoop of herbs, and I add other softer vegetables like cabbage, celery, mushroom, carrots, or any other vegetable that is not as hard as things like the potatoes and yam that I mentioned earlier. I also add my lentil at this point, so that I add my lentils at this point. Remember to make that pot as colorful with vegetables as possible, or add more colors when you warm it. I also add the pièce de résistance. Yes, you guessed right. It's palm oil. I haven't tried coconut oil in it, but I am sure it will be just as nice because of the taste of coconut. Don't forget to, and once you add this palm oil, watch this meal transform into something magical. Don't forget to add salt to taste. Cook for another 5 minutes, and you are done. Phew. You should be turning this meal as it's still on the stove. when you've turned the fire off, so that the heat would go round until it all cools down. After it cools down, I separate into pots. I usually store my food in metal, stainless steel pots, as much as possible. When I can, I store them in stainless steel pots, and I put some in the freezer if it's too much. Or I could divide it into two, bring out half will stay in the fridge and the other half in the fridge. During the week, if we finish that, I'll take the other one out. When you have this as your first meal, not necessarily breakfast, but breakfast for your kids, you will all be so full because you have fed your body what it actually needs and not junk. You will have energy and your brain will stay alert because it's been fueled well. Your child will settle, your child will behave better because their brain is fueled, especially for special need kids. Sometimes they're not even able to communicate hunger to you, and it means their body isn't getting the energy it needs. When you eat this meal, you will fast intermittently without planning it because you're not reaching out for sweet things to tie you over till the next meal. Finally, don't forget to get to bed by 9 p.m. before 9 p.m. latest. Yes, do this gradually. Start going 30 minutes earlier, 1 hour earlier, gradually until you get there. If you or your children aren't well rested, no matter what you eat, your stress level, cortisol, will go up, and so will your blood sugar, and it will affect the food choices you make throughout the day. Move and encourage your children to move around for 15 minutes after a meal. It helps the body become insulin sensitive, and the muscle soaks up the calories instead of storing them, causing fat buildup. This is why people gradually become overweight over the years. Once you start noticing some changes, come back to me. I will share other ideas like school lunch, how to make other food like rice, stews, soups, and other meals to make them more nourishing and prevent blood sugar spikes. I also have a meal plan to make life easier and improve your health and well-being. I wish you well on your healing journey. Please subscribe to my channel as your way of saying thank you to me, and also to get this out to members of our community. The only thing I ask is to please ask anyone who you intend to send this to subscribe, to show you that they've subscribed to my channel, so that we can grow this channel to help more of our community. I wish you well, and I wish you nothing but peace and joy in optimal health.